Then we have our legislative meeting. So I'm going to start the public hearing immediately, 7:00 p.m. Call to order. This is a public hearing regarding Charter Amendment Resolution 2022-CR-01 regarding elections. We are having this meeting to solicit public input on this charter amendment. The charter amendment, looking away all these things, is amending the charter of the town of Riverdale Park to provide for the creation, composition, terms, duties, and responsibilities of a board of elections for the town of Riverdale Park, to specify the duties and responsibilities of the board of elections, and alter certain duties and responsibilities of elections judges for municipal elections, to provide for the designation, duties, and responsibilities of a chief election judge and deputy chief election judge, to make certain changes in style and terminology, and generally to relate to the conduct and management of municipal elections and the town of Riverdale Park. This charter amendment was introduced on January 3rd, 2022, and this public hearing satisfies many of the requirements of both state and local law for having a public hearing for a charter amendment. So, given all of that, are there any public comments on this charter amendment? Ms. Kelly, do you wish to speak?
You know, I do. Only to say that it's no surprise that I'm in support of this, and I think it's in good time. And I thank Councilmember Lingua for introducing it, and for everyone who worked on it. And I know everybody did. And I think that you should proceed and just vote yes and go home.
So the schedule requires a little bit more than that, but we have a special legislative set for the end of the month, and we'll vote on it at that time. But I appreciate your sentiment. Are there additional public comments? Councilmember Lingua, you wish to comment?
Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say to Ms. Kelly, on behalf of the staff and all those involved in working on this, thank you very much.
Hi, Alan. Can I say a couple things?
Please do. Can you please state your name? I should have gotten Ms. Kelly to state her name and address. Can you state your name?
My name is Sarah Zolad, and I live at 406 Sheridan Street. I have been the chief election judge for the town for the past 2 elections, and have really enjoyed working with Jessica and the rest of the town to try to respond to COVID and the changing needs of elections. I think it's extraordinarily important that we have a board of elections so that we can respond to the growing needs as far as making sure that elections are clear and transparent and as much of the community is involved as possible. What I'm really looking forward to, if I'm allowed to continue with this work, is working on educating and reaching out to the community when it is not election year, and trying to get as many people registered to vote and involved in elections and in the government of Riverdale.
Thank you, Ms. Olad. I appreciate that.
Thank you, Sarah.
Are there additional public comments? Okay, we are scheduled to continue this public hearing for another 10 minutes. So just in case there are people waiting in the wings, then we will keep the meeting going until that time. Anyone who wishes to speak, please raise your hand. I will, every few minutes, should I see someone new arrive, I will remind people that they are allowed to speak and they should raise their hand if they wish to.
Mayor Thompson, would it be an appropriate time for me to answer the questions that you had at the last meeting? I've spoken with the town attorney.
That would be great.
Certainly. Just as a recap, last week, Mayor Thompson had a few questions about the charter amendment, specifically the section relating to the replacement of members of the Board of Elections. I did contact the town attorney and he did agree that there could be some additional clarification. And if Ryan, if you could scroll down to the next page, there is a very, very minor amendment. Actually, it's all the way towards the end, Ryan, I'm sorry. There's one minor amendment that the council may want to consider, and it just clarifies what would happen if a member of the Board of Elections were to resign in the middle of their term. And basically, just like you had asked, Mayor Thompson, that would be the appointment would fill the remainder of the term. And then that would have all the election judges or all the members of the Board of Election on the same schedule. Now, I did ask the town attorney about whether we needed to make any changes to the ordinance, the companion ordinance. And the town attorney did not feel that any amendments were needed to the companion ordinance. And lastly, the question that came up was about the process and how we would handle situations on election day. And the town attorney recommended that we have the Board of Elections consider that as part of their review of the overall process, since there will be additional changes needed to the charter and code, and they could be made at that time.
Very good. Thank you for that information. I appreciate hearing back from the town attorney on this.
Certainly.
So I haven't seen anyone new come in, but in case someone has come in who wishes to comment, then please raise your hand or unmute, and I'll be happy to allow you to comment on this charter amendment. We have an additional 5 minutes in the public hearing. Anyone who wishes to make comments, please raise your hand or unmute, and I will recognize you. 2-minute warning. It is 7:13. Anyone who wishes to comment on this charter amendment, please raise your hand or unmute, and I will be happy to recognize you. I have to say the last few charter amendments have gotten a lot more public comment at this stage of the process than this one. This is awfully quiet. One minute left. Thirty seconds. Any final comments? You can comment on placement of commas, on anything. Ten seconds. I'll hold it open to the end of your comment if you raise your hand before the meeting ends. Okay, it is 7:15 and this public hearing has ended. And let's go ahead and jump into the legislative meeting. So with that, call this meeting to order at 7:15 p.m. Please all rise if you can for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing for a moment of silent prayer or silent reflection as your conscience finds appropriate. Thank you. Please be seated. Members of the council, you have before you an agenda. And are any amendments required to the agenda at this time? One possibility of an amendment is that there are many people here I know to comment on legislative action item number 1. We could conceivably reorder, but that's certainly not required. We just continue to go with the agenda as published. Okay, do any members have conflicts of interest, financial or ethical, with any items that are on the agenda this evening that you need to disclose? Hearing none, may I please have a motion to approve the agenda as submitted?
So moved. Second.
I believe the motion was made by Councilmember Foe and seconded by Councilmember Smith. Is that correct? I wasn't watching the squares light up quite as carefully as I should have. Very good. Is there any discussion of the agenda? Are there any public comments? Hearing none, I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq,
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia,
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 601. The first item on the agenda is a proclamation, two of them, if you count the English and the Spanish separately. And I would like to read those proclamations at this time. A proclamation in honor of Black History Month 2022. Whereas the mayor and council are proud to join with town residents, business owners, visitors, and employees, along with individuals and communities throughout the country in celebrating February as Black History Month. And whereas in February 1926, Dr. Carter G. Woodson initiated a one-week celebration of the historic contributions of Black people to American life. And this celebration corresponded with the birthdays of Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. And in 1976, this period of celebration was expanded to include the month of February. And whereas when Black History Month was officially established, President Gerald Ford called upon the public to, quote, seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park recognizes that now more than ever, Black history must be taught, discussed, and celebrated throughout the year. And whereas still today, racial injustice and inequity against Black people are widespread. And whereas racial justice and inequity are destructive to our values and our future and must be local, state, and national priorities. And whereas the town of Riverdale Park is committed to racial justice and equity, diversity and inclusion, and is supporting policies, programs, and initiatives that aim to eradicate systemic racism and undo its historical damage. And whereas our town's cultural diversity enriches our community, and Black heritage is an inseparable part of that enrichment as it weaves throughout our history, profoundly influencing every aspect of life. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the town of Riverdale Park's mayor and council do hereby proclaim February as Black History Month and call on everyone in our community to work for racial justice and equity this month and throughout the year in recognition and celebration of Black history. Y ahora en español, proclamación, una proclamación en honor del mes de la historia afroamericana 2022. Considerando que el alcalde y el consejo se enorgullecen de unirse a los residentes de la ciudad, propietarios de negocios, visitantes y empleados, junto con individuos y comunidades de todo el país en la celebración de febrero como el mes de la historia afroamericana. Considerando que en febrero de 1926, el Dr. Carter G. Woodson inició una celebración de una semana de las contribuciones históricas de las afroamericanas a la vida estadounidense, y esta celebración se correspondía con el cumpleaños de Frederick Douglass y Abraham Lincoln, y en 1976, este periodo de la celebración se amplió para incluir el mes de febrero. Y considerando cuando se estableció oficialmente el mes de la historia afroamericana, el presidente Gerald Ford pidió al público que aproveche la oportunidad para honrar los logros de los afroamericanos, a menudo olvidados en cada área de actividad a lo largo de nuestra historia. Y por cuanto la ciudad de Riverdale Park reconoce que ahora más que nunca la historia afroamericana debe enseñarse, discutirse y celebrarse durante todo el año. Y considerando que aún hoy la injusticia racial y la inequidad contra los afroamericanos están muy extendidas, y por cuanto la justicia racial y la inequidad son destructivas para nuestros valores y nuestro futuro, y deben ser prioridades locales, estatales y nacionales, y considerando que la ciudad de Riverdale Park está comprometida con la justicia y equidad racial, la diversidad y la inclusión, y con el apoyo de políticas, programas y iniciativas que tienen como objetivo erradicar el racismo sistémico y deshacer su daño histórico. considerando que la diversidad cultural de nuestra ciudad enriquece a nuestra comunidad y la herencia afroamericana es una parte inseparable de ese enriquecimiento a medida que se teje a lo largo de nuestra historia, influyendo profundamente en todos los aspectos de la vida. Ahora, por lo tanto, se resuelve que el alcalde y el consejo de la ciudad de Riverdale Park proclaman por el presidente federal como el mes de la historia afroamericana y hacen una llamada a todos en nuestra comunidad a trabajar por la justicia y equidad racial este mes y durante todo el año en reconocimiento y celebración de la historia afroamericana. Muchas gracias. Thank you to everyone for that proclamation. The next item on the agenda is the Defined Benefit Plan Review as of December 21, 2021 by Michelle Brandenburg. Ms. Brandenburg.
I know she's here, Mr. Mayor.
I see her. I think she may be on mute.
Yes.
I was talking to myself. Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. Can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, great. So John, would you like me to share my screen or would you like me to direct with page numbers?
Well, it looks like we already have it pulled up. So if you can just direct the
All right.
page numbers.
Great. So I'm actually going to start on page 10. And before I get too ahead of myself, I just want to confirm the agenda for today. And for those of you who have listened to me present before, this is typically how we operate with things, which is to start with just a brief market overview, just add some context to what we experienced in 2021. I'll also bring everyone up to date in 2022. Because I think arguably 2022 has been much more volatile than 2021 and therefore much more interesting and what everyone is going through right now. Then we'll go into the portfolio positioning, walk through our strategic positioning for the pension plan, and then we will end with the portfolio performance. How does that sound for an agenda?
Sounds good.
All right, great. So despite ongoing pandemic, record inflation, and high equity market valuations, the S&P 500 had a really great year in 2021. So the S&P 500 did hit 70 new highs, returning just under 29% for 2021, which is up 110% from March 2020. And if we think about what has been driving this great market performance, you think, one, we've had a lot of monetary and fiscal stimulus pumped into the system. Our chief investment strategist likes to call it a market sugar high. So the market has certainly benefited from the monetary and fiscal stimulus. And then we've also had better than expected corporate earnings, especially in the second half of 2021. This was the best growth that we've seen in 15 years. So we saw 45% year-over-year increase in earnings. Now this is the 21st best year since the S&P 500 inception. And in 2021, we really did not see much volatility at all. And that's just a contrast to what we are seeing and experiencing so far in 2022. So the S&P 500 in 2021 only fell about 5%. That was the maximum drawdown that we experienced in 2021. And this is actually not the norm for the market. What we have seen so far in 2022 The S&P 500 did approach correction territory. That is actually more of the norm. So volatility is to be expected. We actually think the market had a lot to grapple with in the beginning of 2022, and that's really why we've seen this increase in volatility, more of the norm with volatility here. So, and I will flip to the next page, page 11. And if there is any way to make that little chart in the top right a little bit bigger, that's the one I'll be focusing on. Thank you so much. All right, so what has the market been grappling with in 2022? And I'll take us back to 2021 to talk about where we were in the economic cycle. So in the economic cycle, we really felt like during 2021, we were in the accelerating expansion phase of the market. And you can just see some of the characteristics here. Some you definitely recognize. Unemployment falling as we continue to see the economy improve. We saw unemployment falling from the pandemic, but we also have experienced, and somewhat uniquely from other business cycles, inflation rising. And so we've certainly seen that strong activity in the market as well. Now, turn over to 2022 and really what changed, what difference is there? And really, this is a change in Federal Reserve posture. And so the Federal Reserve has now recognized that inflation is too high and has really announced some measures in order to reduce that inflation. And the big one that the market has been grappling with is increasing interest rates. So in 2021, we were thinking maybe 3 interest rate hikes for 2022. Now that we're in 2022 and you have heard from the Federal Reserve, we are thinking that there will be 5 interest rate hikes, 25 basis points each in 2022. So that's really what the market has been grappling with. And when we think about what happens with rising interest rates, it's really about things getting more expensive for companies. So really financing becomes more expensive with those higher interest rates. We do expect fixed income to be challenged on a go-forward basis because of this. But the good thing is, and for those of you who have maybe been investing for a while or had savings accounts, back in the 80s, you look at these interest rates and these yields and it's laughable, right? So absolutely still towards historical lows. But the good news is that as these bonds turn over, you get to invest at a higher yielding bond. So that is supportive of the fixed income side. It's just a little bumpy as the interest rates rise, and you'll see that in the portfolio. We did experience negative returns in 2021, and we've certainly experienced negative returns in fixed income in 2022 as well. So this isn't necessarily a negative story here. We really think the biggest thing from going from an accelerating expansion to a slowing expansion is really the slower growth. So not negative growth, but slower growth. And that's really the key theme. We had 45% earnings increase in 2021. We expect 9% in 2022. Similarly, for GDP, we are over 5% for 2021. We're expecting closer to 3.5% for 2022. So again, everything's just moving towards that slower phase. And what I want to emphasize is that just because we've entered a slowing expansion does not mean that contraction is on the horizon. From the financial crisis in 2008 through until the pandemic, that very long bull market run, we saw us oscillating between accelerating expansion, slowing expansion, accelerating expansion, slowing expansion. So that is absolutely still on the table. we are positive when it comes to equity markets because of that earnings growth number that I mentioned. We just don't think we're going to get returns like we saw in 2021. So I'll pause there. I know that was a quick whirlwind tour, but are there any questions about, what we're seeing in the market or what we saw in 2021?
Councilmember Lingua.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I was wondering if you could comment on that one indicator in the market, the 10-year Treasury note. It's now at 1.91, which is about where it was in December 2019.
Yes, absolutely. So we've really seen a bounce in interest rates, and especially on the longer term side more recently here with the really strong jobs report that we most recently saw. I think, from our perspective, the 10-year can really be used as a marker for not only inflation expectations,
Right.
growth expectations, all of that, which has very little to do with the Fed. The Fed can really drive shorter term rates, but not so much from a longer term rate perspective. And what we saw in the beginning of 2022, which we actually thought was somewhat of a negative sign, is that we saw a yield curve flattening. So we're starting to see that long term rate pick up, which we think is healthy. Yield curve inversion, while it doesn't always mean, necessarily a recession, it's not always the best sign because it means growth expectations, those economic growth expectations are not looking good from a go forward basis because of the term premium. Now, that being said, we would expect longer term rates to stay range bound. Just big picture, we still have a lot of places around the world with very low interest rates. That creates demand on our longer term interest rates, which can keep them low. Just to counter that, the Federal Reserve is going to slow down its purchases of those longer term bonds, so that could potentially boost them up. But all in all, we would expect them to be, somewhat range bound and towards historical lows. We don't expect it to, bump up quickly to what we've seen in years past. Does that help, Council Member?
Yes, it does, especially the point you made about the 10 years being also an expectation on what inflation is going to be. And as much as it has been in the news and the concern about rising prices and, what are the characteristics behind this current increase in inflation, were it to be something that was going to be seen as more of a longer term thing, wouldn't we be seeing greater increases in that rate now, as opposed to it, just at this point being at 1.9?
Yeah, potentially. I think that's actually one of the reasons why we think inflation might be peaking. And I don't mean that we expect prices to drop,
Right.
but the market is certainly saying, okay, we don't expect, that high inflation to last for that long. Now, that being said, I do want to, inflation is not prices falling. It's always off of that base year effect. And 2021's base year effect was 2020. We're coming from 2021, so we expect 2022 to be lower. But that being said, it's still above the Federal Reserve's long-term target of 2%. And that's, assuming supply chains get better. There's still some underlying fundamental things that are driving that.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Any additional questions?
I don't see any, so why don't you continue, Ms. Brandenburg?
All right, great. So I'm going to jump pretty far ahead to page 23. All right, great. So this is big picture asset allocation for the pension plan against its policy targets and also its policy range. And these targets and ranges are according to the town code. So that is all in line with what is written down for the town of Riverdale Park. So you can see our total equity is sitting at 60%, just slightly above your longer term target of 58%. Again, I mentioned that we are more positive on equity markets right now than we are on fixed income markets. So we felt very comfortable being about 2% overweight at year end. You can see your well-diversified large, mid, and small cap equities. We also have global equities, which is a global infrastructure investment. And we also have international equities as well. Now, your international equities does not have a dedicated position to emerging markets, but you do have a manager that will strategically and tactically allocate some of, and I think it's up to 25% of the funds into emerging markets. And I say that because emerging markets experienced a lot of volatility in 2021, mostly because of China regulatory concerns and the Evergrande scandal, which we think is mostly sentiment driven, but your portfolio was able to successfully avoid those type of exposures. That other equity line that you see there, that is real estate. And we are using a passive investment for that real estate exposure. And I wanted to highlight that because these passive investments, and we've selected the passive investment with the highest amount of this, the highest amount of specialized REITs. And so specialized REITs is really capitalizing on what we think will be a long-term trend, which is 5G build out, data center build out, all of those areas that don't necessarily get their value from the real estate, they get their value from what's on them. And we just expect more and more growth from that area of the real estate market. So I say that because I know a lot of clients have concerns about the more retail and office oriented real estate. And I want to make sure I emphasize that this real estate investment does have a lot of diversification and specifically a higher allocation to more data driven. The fixed income, you see a single line item here, but this is well diversified and just some key elements of your fixed income allocation. It is more credit oriented, which means we do have a lot more corporates than we do treasuries. So that has certainly helped over the long term. We are also slightly shorter duration than the market, which has been helpful. And we also have an allocation to what we call TIPS or Treasury Inflation Protected Securities. And they move with inflation. They tend to add a lot of value when inflation is higher than expectation. So that has certainly been helpful for the portfolio in 2021. That's actually only a strategic position in pension plans where there is a chance that increases will occur because of inflation. So I know I gave a roundabout tour. Our key positioning is we have more domestic than international. We have a strategic real estate position. And then we also are more credit focused and shorter duration in fixed income. So I'll pause there. Any questions about the overall portfolio positioning?
Councilman Burr Smith has his hand up.
Okay, great.
Thanks, Ms.
Councilmember?
Brand- Yes, thanks, Ms. Brandenburg. I'm wondering if you have anything you can provide here, or I can take it later, if not, on where we might have holdings in the carbon-based fuel sectors or with companies that use compulsory labor.
So we have not run that analysis on this portfolio, so I can't give you any figures offhand. That is something that we can follow up with, just give you a better understanding, and just so I make sure that I know it was carbon and then also labor as well.
Yes, companies that use compulsory labor.
So like I said, we have not done that look through for this portfolio, but it is something that we are seeing more and more of, clients asking for that type of analysis. And when we do that, we have really fantastic data on all the underlying holdings. So we use mutual funds and ETFs, but we do have the ability to look through. So that's something that we can look into and follow up with, and I'll work with John to do so.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
I don't see any more questions, so please continue with your presentation, Ms. Brandenburg.
Okay, great. Well, keeping in mind those key themes, I'd love to jump down to page 29, which is the investment performance. Okay, so you can see it was a really strong 2021. We talked about how strong the market was, and the town of Riverdale Park's pension plan most certainly participated in that. So you can see we returned almost 14% for all of 2021. So really strong fourth quarter at about 5%. And you can see those longer term numbers, 3 years and 5 years, 15% and 11%. And when I think about longer term, looking at 3 or 5 and thinking about anywhere from 10 to 15%, that seems a little bit high to me for a portfolio that's managed with 60% equity. We would expect returns to be lower on a go-forward basis. And I know this is something that we've talked about with the town of Riverdale Park in the past, and especially through numerous conversations with John and also your actuary as well around the plan. But it's been great. We've been in this extended bull market for quite some time. And even with a pandemic, a contraction, a recession, even with that, if you were to have blinked your eyes, you might not have even seen it when you're looking at overall portfolio returns. But overall, the portfolio has done really well. Just some things that I mentioned earlier that has really helped this portfolio. So one is being more domestically focused. So that domestic tilt has certainly helped as the US market has outperformed the international market. Us avoiding a dedicated exposure to emerging markets was very helpful during 2021. Also, real estate, that REIT position was the best performing asset class in 2021. And it wasn't necessarily driven by those factors that I mentioned, those data centers and that 5G. It actually oscillated between those type of real estate exposures, plus your more traditional retail and office. And all of that was driven by COVID, opening and closing, whether or not, Omicron was going to stop things, how Delta was impacting things. But because real estate exposure had both, led to the best performing asset class for 2021. On the fixed income side, you can see over the long term, having a higher credit exposure than the benchmark and also a shorter duration has certainly helped the portfolio. And I also would be remiss if I did not add that the Treasury inflation protected securities, those securities that follow inflation, really benefited the pension in 2021. So in conclusion, very strong performance, very strong relative performance from the pension plan. And I think most importantly, because I know this is a lot for all of the participants and for the town of Riverdale Park to put money into this pension plan and to trust us to invest it appropriately. I'm going to make sure you know that, as those funds are coming in, we're thinking about the opportunities in the market, allocating according to your investment policy, staying disciplined, including staying disciplined in times like the beginning of 2022, looking for those opportunities in the portfolio. So I know it's a big deal for everyone to be putting in so much money, and hopefully these results help ease some concerns. Are there any questions about the overall performance?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Councilmember Lingua, please speak.
Thank you. So would you say that the firm is comfortable with the numbers that you're seeing under the inception to date column?
So I would say that's more realistic for this portfolio. And what I will say, Councilmember Lingua, is that
Yes,
the
ma'am.
inception date for the town of Riverdale Park was in 2000. And the
Right.
only thing that is being picked up in our system is unfortunately a cash allocation from back to that date.
Okay.
And so I'm not exactly sure, how that was invested back in 2000.
Right.
But you can see you're relatively in line with the overall market benchmark, which we feel very good about. And I would say
Okay.
that number is most likely more realistic on a longer term basis.
Okay. So you're fairly
Does that help
comfortable with
answer
it?
the question?
Yeah. So you're fairly comfortable with
Yeah.
it? Okay.
Yep. It's what I would expect over that longer term time period.
Okay. Thank you.
I don't see any other questions. Do you have more content in your presentation? Ms.
So
Brandon?
that was my planned remarks, Mayor, but I'm happy to answer any additional questions, or if anyone would like to talk about something else as it relates to the defined benefit plan, happy to have that discussion as well.
Very good. Councilmember Smith has a question.
I don't know if I call it a question so much, Mr. Mayor, is using my bully pulpit here. And again, thank you, Ms. Brandenburg, for being here. I really appreciate the in-depth briefing you gave us. I'm, of course, a huge supporter of defined benefit pensions, traditionally as offered by labor unions. I think they're great. I think they are awesome, and everyone should have one instead of a defined contribution plan. I do want to point out something. I often talk in this forum about the importance of labor unions and what they do for communities beyond just the union members themselves. And it struck me that we heard in the first part of your presentation that inflation is too high, which is the result of things costing too much. And that's a big problem, yet we hear that wages remain stagnant, and also hear that there are historic levels of corporate earnings. And I think I'm not the only person that recognizes there's some pieces that don't quite fit there. And I hope folks just keep that in mind in your shopping practices and your engagement with the community. And when I talk about the importance of labor unions and how they raise wages for everyone in a community, not just those members, this is the kind of stuff we're talking about here. We have rising prices on things that are made by people whose wages aren't increasing, yet those corporate profits are at all-time highs at a time where in this very venue, in this council, we've recently voted to extend support programs for people who are hungry, who can't eat, who can't afford food. So there's my little a soapbox statement for that. And again, that's nothing there directed at you, Ms. Brandenburg. I really thank you for being here and for that in-depth briefing and for checking up on those other items for me.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Are there questions from, if there are no more council questions, are there questions from members of the public? Okay, thank you, Ms. Brandenburg. I appreciate the update. I appreciate the good news from last year, if not the first month of this year, and forward to hearing back from you in the future. Thank you.
Thank
Thank
you,
you.
Michelle. Thanks,
Okay,
Michelle.
let's move on to the next presentation, fiscal year 2023 budget presentation. Mr. Jones.
Good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's budget presentation is an update for where we're at. So it shows the mid-year budget versus actuals for the current fiscal year and compares it to where we were at in the previous fiscal year. So it's going to report tonight reflects revenue and expenditures from the beginning of the fiscal year up until the midpoint of December 31st. So for the current fiscal year, revenue is, the town revenue is at $6,055,657, which is at 78% of the budgeted revenue amount. Expenditures for the current fiscal year total $3,920,121, which is exactly where we'd like to be at midway through the year, which is at 50% of the budget. In the previous fiscal year, you can see that the revenue was roughly about the same percentage point at 78%. The actual revenue was $5,634,594 with a budgeted amount of $7,251,320. Expenditures, $3,474,735, which is at 48%. So if we look at the current fiscal year, revenue for midway through the year at 78%, puts the town in a good position for revenue, and at expenditures, we're right where we're supposed to be at 50%. So overall performance through the first half of the fiscal year is meeting the budgeted expectations. The town is in a good position. And as we build the upcoming fiscal year 2023 proposed budget process, we are in good standing as we put together the budgeted numbers. So based on this analysis, we don't foresee that there will be any budget revisions, and the staff will continue to monitor the revenue and expenditures. And at this point, if there are any questions regarding the mid-year budget update, I'll be open to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. The consistency of the fractions from year to year is astonishing to me, honestly, but it's good to see that. Are there council questions or comments for Mr. Jones's presentation?
I had a similar thought myself, so thank you for expressing that.
Are there any additional public comments? Excuse me, comments from members of the public? Questions? No one seems to be unmuting, so I think we will take that as a no. So is that the end of your presentation, Mr. Jones?
Yes, that's the end of the mid-year. There are the finance reports that cover January as well.
But that comes after the town manager's report.
Correct, yes.
Okay, very good. Well, I will jump ahead to the next item on the agenda, which is my report. I think everyone knows this is February. I saw a newscaster decrying February as a month, and it's not been a very good month so far, but hopefully it will pick up. So let's start off with the events of the weekend. As I think almost everyone knows, there was a robbery at the Wells Fargo Bank at the corner of Baltimore Avenue and East West Highway on Saturday. There were multiple gunmen who were attempting to get money from an armored car driver as the driver was restocking an ATM. The driver did not give in to their requests and received multiple gunshot wounds. This was about 4 o'clock in the afternoon on Saturday. I wish this didn't happen. This is unfortunate. I'm very glad that the driver survived and is in the hospital and is apparently doing okay. But it's very unfortunate. But we do have a bank at the corner of two very busy roads, and so it's a tempting target. And I am hopeful that perhaps the police department can work with bank ownership and figure out ways that we can lessen the chance of this. And I'm hopeful that the county police who have taken over the investigation of this crime are successful in bringing the perpetrators to justice. The second item of my report, also not good news. This was discussed at our work session last week in late January. Mayor Kevin Ward of Hyattsville committed suicide. And this was a tragic end to a very promising life, a very productive life up to that time. And it was devastating for many people in the community. And it's something that we'll be suffering from for many years to come. Last week, Councilmember Smith spoke eloquently of his personal friendship and political relationship also with Mayor Ward, and I hope he will again do that during his Ward report this evening. I'm going to simply focus on the remainder of this section on suicide prevention, because I think that that's an important thing that I can talk about and perhaps prevent similar tragedies in the future. So first of all, there is a National Suicide Prevention Hotline. The number is 800-273-8255. The last four of those numbers spell out TALK. And in July of this year, a 3-digit to complement 311 and 911 and so on, 988 will be added, put you immediately in touch with suicide prevention. I'm looking forward to that. It's too bad that it's taken as long as it has to come. So what can you individually do if you are concerned that a friend, a colleague, a family member is considering suicide? The first is to be very direct and ask, are you thinking about suicide? Are you considering suicide? When they answer, listen very carefully, listen and pay attention to their needs, be non-judgmental, and very carefully, the recommendations I saw, do not promise to keep it secret. This is something that may need to be shared. They may try to extract that promise from you. Please do your best to not have that happen. The psychology of suicide indicates that most people feel suicide when they are disconnected, feel disconnected. And I don't have the slightest idea of how Mayor Ward could possibly feel that way, but apparently he did. And so to help them feel connected, there's many ways to do that. But one of the things you should do if you're talking to them is help them focus on their reasons to keep living. Not your reasons, not the community's reasons, their reasons, the things that they will miss, that they will not be able to do if they're gone. Second part of this helping them feel connected is to be there physically, to be there on the phone, to be sending text messages, checking in, just be there for them. And most importantly, keep listening, listen carefully, try to help them out. Third suggested item is to keep them safe. Find out during your discussions with them the status of any suicide plan they have, whether they have one, whether they've started collecting items, whether they have some idea of when they're going to do it. And if they have a plan, and if you can do it, remove the means to carry it out. Take away the poison, take away the firearm. Because it's just too easy if it's there. If it becomes more difficult, sometimes you can prevent a suicide that way. Last but not least, still hearkening back to the connections, try to connect them to the hotline, try to get them to call, try to connect them to other resources that may exist in the community. It's really, as I said earlier, it's a tragedy that we lost Mayor Ward. And I had been getting to know him. He was not a close friend to me, but from reading the many eulogies and remembrances of him, I feel that that I missed out, that he was a really good guy and I should have worked harder to get to know him. But for the pandemic, I think I might have. Thank you. Next item in my report section on the status of the pandemic. So this is there's a lot of good news here. The case rates are dropping into what I would refer to as the not terrible range. They're almost to the level where we would be willing to open up town hall for the 1 day a week that we currently have built into our reopening plans. And we haven't had statistics this good, numbers this good, case rates this good since December 14th. Of course, in December, we didn't know what the case rates were because of the cyber attack on the state. But looking backwards at the data they filled back in, this is about the numbers that we had on December 14th. There's a lot of not good news about today, this month. On Saturday, the U.S. Crossed the official mark of 900,000 U.S. dead. 900,000 people have died of this virus that have been recognized as being suffering from this. And 100,000 of those, more than 10%, have been since December 11th. Remember, that was about the time that we had these good diagnosis numbers. So in the 6-8 weeks since December 11th, we've lost more than 10% of the total number in the pandemic. And today is also an interesting anniversary. This is the 2-year anniversary of the death of Li Wenliang. He was the Chinese doctor, the Chinese ophthalmologist, who released the information about, publicly released the information about the existence of COVID, about the new pneumonia that seemed to be ripping through the hospital. He caught it, and he died 2 years ago today. So we're on a patch of calmer water in the storm of the pandemic. But ahead of us, there are thick fog banks, and we don't know what's there. Are we going to continue with these low numbers? Do we have another wave, another variant lurking in the wings? We don't really know. This is a time that we can, when the numbers are good, that we can take to prepare for that unknown future. So we distributed huge numbers of masks. The town distributed huge numbers of masks. I believe that town manager of the station has probably a better number than I do. I believe we distributed about 75,000 masks, N95s and KN95s, another 17,000 surgical masks. Huge number of masks. I presume that most people in town still have some of those. Please store them. Please put them in a safe place. We'll almost certainly need them in the future. It's also time, if you can afford to do so, to stock up on test kits. Should a new wave show up, it's good to have them. It's good to know when you should take precautions, should isolate yourself if you are COVID positive. And of course, the other thing you can do, since it takes 4 to 6 weeks to get full effect of the vaccine, is get yourself vaccinated. Get your second vaccine if you haven't gotten that. Get your booster if you've gotten the first 2 vaccines. Take advantage of this role, take advantage of this time to protect yourself for the future. Another piece of good news is that the Omicron subvariant, the one that's called BA.2, seems to be similar enough to BA.1 that there's some protection from BA.1 infection against reinfection. Not clear how good that is. There is some contrary data. Some people are reporting reinfections after only 6 weeks. So you have an initial infection and 6 weeks later you're reinfected. Much better than that if you've been vaccinated. The BA.2 variant seems to be heading in the direction of being the dominant variant because it is more infectious than BA.1, as BA.1 was more infectious than the previous Delta wave. So a little bit of mixed news there. Something I discussed in January, my report in January, are just a couple of controversial items, but those are long COVID and COVID's impact on the immune system, whether it damages your immune system, perhaps long-term or permanently. These are areas of intense research. There are new research results coming out each day on these topics, and there's an enormous disagreement about what's going on and what the current data means. These are very smart people, and they have immense resources, and they have very different ideas of what is true about these. Until these questions are sorted out, the best idea, as has been true for a long time, is to avoid catching COVID. There are a few things that I've heard from people over the last month, over the last 6 weeks. One of them is a sort of fatalism about vaccination, saying the vaccines are not working. This is not true. The vaccines are still effective. They do reduce somewhat. That number is also under argument, do reduce transmission, but they are very effective against hospitalization, and they are very effective at keeping you from dying from COVID. The CDC came out with some numbers recently that vaccination is a 97-fold reduction in your chance of death. So you're 97 times more likely to die from COVID if you are unvaccinated. Another way to not catch COVID, wear your masks, avoid poorly ventilated public spaces, and particularly poorly ventilated, crowded public spaces. I follow this advice myself. I declined an invitation to an event that was very interesting, sounded like a great event, and I declined that just today because discussing with the person who invited me, there's insufficient ventilation that I would feel safe there. That's the end of the section on COVID. Again, please stay safe, take advantage of this, this quiet period, this lull in the disease to prepare. There are definitely indications that there are other variants out there and things can be bad again very quickly. The final note I will make in my report before closing out is that the state legislature is in session. Many things are going on there. Many bills are being introduced and debated. And I'm doing my best to stay on top of it. And anyone who has questions about a bill, please reach out to me. I can generally get a response and answer from part of our delegation quickly. And with that, I conclude my report. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is the town manager's report. Mr. Town Manager.
Yes, good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of council and the community, and the staff team. I'll be relatively brief this evening. In response to the mask distribution, it's really nice to get the notes, the emails, the cards from our residents expressing appreciation. And the staff team, I'll say it this way, those little appreciations that we receive, it really puts some wind behind the staff team's sails when they're having a long day, knowing that they're helping the residents, and it's greatly appreciated. So I just wanted to point that out. The Department of Public Works and Town Hall operations will be closed on the 21st for President's Day. And then the staff team's making good progress on the budget and the proposed budget for fiscal 23. We will learn next week about the assessable base and any impact that the pandemic may have on values, on property values. The last thing I have, in listening to the mayor's comments, I'm going to add my own comment on suicide and mental health. I appreciate the openness of which the mayor and members of council And I think the town talks about mental health. That's really important, and that's not how it always was. And as a survivor of suicide, my first husband killed himself 18 and a half years ago. And to be able to have open discussions like this, I think is good. It's good for people who are feeling lost and alone. And it's good for our community to be able to have open discussions about mental health and suicide. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Mr. Lustician. Are there any questions for the town manager? I don't see any hands or unmutings, so let's move on to the monthly finance report.
Mr. Jones.
Thank you, John. Again, good evening, Mayor and Council, members of the public. Tonight's finance reports are much like finance reports from the previous months, covers the last month and then the 2 months preceding it, so November, December, and January. And it shows a year-to-date of where we are in the current fiscal year, the fiscal year that preceded, and the one before that. So currently, town revenue for the month of January, revenue for the town was $1,280,338. Expenditures total $579,785 for a net of $700,553. In the previous fiscal year, the town revenue was $1,203,159. Expenditures totaled $602,670 with a net of $600,489. So year to date for the current fiscal year, revenue set total $7,335,996. If you recall from the previous report, revenue was at $6,055,000. So January is a month where the town typically records a great deal of revenue, and that is consistent with the current fiscal year. Currently, the town is at 94% of budgeted revenue. So revenues continue to perform where we have predicted them to be. And in the previous fiscal year, revenue was for year to date was at 94% as well. A total of $6,837,000 with a budgeted amount of $7,251,320. So our revenue continues to be strong, and it's moving in a way that it has in the past. We're continuing to monitor our expenditures as well, with the year to date of $4,499,906, which is at 58% of where we are budgeted. And if we look at the previous fiscal year, $4,077,405, which is 56% of what was budgeted in the previous fiscal year. So again, overall performance throughout the first half of the fiscal year is generally meeting the budgeted expectations. The town is in a strong financial position, and as we continue to get deeper into the budget season, we don't have any plans to have to revise the budget. And we're in a good position as we prepare for the budget season and the end of the year. So again, I will take any questions. That is the conclusion of the finance reports.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Are there questions from council? Not seeing any unmutings. Other questions from members of the public? Councilmember Lingua.
No, I was just preparing for a motion, but I will comment again, the consistency of the numbers over the years and percentages of which revenues and expenditures are to each other. And the consistency there is pretty darned impressive.
Agreed. Are there questions from members of the public? Okay, Mr. Councilman, would you like to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to adopt the finance report subject to audit.
Second. Oh,
Motion by Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Foe. Is that correct?
I think so.
Okay. Is there any discussion of this motion? Are there any public comments? Do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 6-0-1. The next item on our agenda, hold on a second, let me get it up, is correspondence summary. There are 2 letters in the correspondence summary. Everyone should have had a chance to review those before the meeting. If there are any questions, please, or motions to be made, please feel free to bring them up under new business or unfinished business. Was there a fire department report, Mr. Town Manager?
No, sir.
Okay, thank you. That brings us to council, committee, and board reports. I will start with Councilmember Smith, Ward 1.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I want to be sure to thank our officers from the Riverdale Park Police Department for their efforts responding to the robbery and injury that resulted from it at the Wells Fargo. As usual, our folks are showing up when they're needed and giving good service to our community. So we appreciate that. I want to add to the mayor's remarks on our COVID state. It seems to be like we're maybe finally getting out of this. Although it's felt like that before, but I'm really optimistic about the imminent approval of the vaccine, Pfizer vaccine for children as young as 6 months. I think that's going to be a game changer. I know a lot of folks who've gone through the cycles of daycares opening and closing in the past couple of years are very excited for that as well. So looking forward to that. Of course, continue doing what we're doing. Thanks to the staff for your Herculean effort in distributing that mini mask. I'm so impressed by that. Like, I've not heard of any other municipality accomplishing that, and I think it's amazing. So let's use those masks. If you're not vaccinated, please get vaccinated. If you are vaccinated and haven't been boosted, please get boosted. It's the single most effective thing we can do to end this and get back to something that resembles normalcy. And I want to personally thank folks that have reached out to me regarding Mayor Ward's death. And thank you on behalf of his family. We attended his memorial service at Hyattsville Methodist on Friday, and I know I saw Council Member Lingua there. And thank you for attending, and thanks anybody else who might have come through that I didn't see. It was a really beautiful service and a great, given the circumstances, experience to celebrate his life in that way with the people that's closer to him. And I was struck by how many people had stories about Scooter, about how close he was to them and how much he did for them as I gave last week. There's just, if you never met Scooter, Mayor Kevin Ward, who was a grown man who went by Scooter, ask somebody who did. And you'll hear some wonderful things. That's how the city of Hyattsville has distributed purple light bulbs to their residents for their outdoors lighting, to have lit up in purple, which was Scooter's favorite color, in honor of Mayor Ward. I've got one on my porch, on my stoop, and I'm sure the city of Hyattsville and his family would appreciate anyone who wanted to pick up a purple light bulb and do the same in our town. And from the public service side, which is, my friendship with Scooter was a lot of the reason that I got into this role, and his encouragement for me to run. And not living in Hyattsville, though, I didn't get to see a lot up close that he did as mayor. And I was really impressed to hear folks talk about the projects he took on, how much the staff and the other council members loved working with him, and things that he was able to accomplish there, such as expanding their franchise to all of their citizens in their community that can have a say regardless of immigration status, and also renaming their what was formerly Magruder Park to Driscoll Park after David C. Driscoll, a prominent African-American artist and art historian and curator who lived near that park that now bears his name. And there was some opposition in their community to that, both of those measures. And I hope that I, as a public servant, and we as a council can continue in his honor and that tradition of showing the courage to do important things like that. And lastly, this is just something exciting that I thought of or heard about today, that the District of Columbia government has, upon request, Narcan kits that they will distribute to any citizen. Anyone can have them. And I know there are many opportunities in our area to have training in how to administer those life-saving devices. Folks are familiar with Narcan. It's a shot that you can give someone who is overdosing and will literally save their life in many cases. So I would definitely be interested in hearing or seeing some more research about how we might be able to implement a program like that as a town. I know I was glad to hear our police department that our officers are trained to use those, but it would be a really cool thing, I think, if we could offer that similar training or partner with someone who can provide that training to our residents, and similarly make Narcan available to the folks of Riverdale Park. And that will conclude my report for this evening, Mr. Mayor. Thanks.
Thank you, Councilmember Smith. Councilmember Foe.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. First and foremost, I just want to say thank you first to our town manager for sharing your story, and to our mayor for talking so openly about mental health. I feel like this has become a place where we can share in our struggles and offer our assistance as we move forward in that. You both continue to redefine leadership, and I am so glad that we get to work together and that I consider you both friends. So thank you for that. And again, what I want to offer to anybody on this call, anybody who is listening to this, I am an available ear. We got a great fire pit in the backyard. And if you need somebody to talk to, all the council members here, you have my information. All of the staff for our town, you are free to access that information. To all the residents of this community, we are in strange times that are uniquely challenging. And I just want to let you know that I am here. My wife is here. We are here. Riverdale Park, right? Secondly, we had another DUI last night on East West Highway, and one of my constituents, Kim Grabble, had her fence destroyed for the 5th time in the last 20 years. And I told her that I would reach out to staff today to talk about who it is we can talk to. I told her it's the State Highway Administration that runs that, but she has a bus stop in her backyard. That sign was run over last evening by a drunk driver, supposedly a hit and run as well. This has happened since we've lived here off East West Highway 7 to 8 times, maybe, with hit and runs, people leaving the scene of an accident, DUIs. There's something about this hill moving west that it allows for a lot of accidents to occur. Eastern Shore. I get my directions messed up occasionally. And our concern constantly is that it's not going to be a loss of property that we're dealing with here. And that continues to happen. So I would love to engage anybody that we possibly can to talk about safety, at least in this core highway. I want to make sure that my constituents are protected from anything that occurs on that highway. And I look for any help. If you can give me a number, if you can give me a name, I will reach out on behalf of the community. I just want to make sure that we are looking out for our constituents and our residents any and all times. And last but not least, again, we've had another instance of horrible violence in this community that is just shattering. I was in Pittsburgh this weekend visiting family, and I received notification from the town and from the mayor as to what happened. And it's my understanding or my belief that's the 4th shooting that's happened in our community within a mile of my home over the last year and a half, probably. And again, I don't have all of the solutions, but I am always willing to listen. I am always willing to learn, and I am always willing to stand up for action that will help protect our community, our residents, our employees. So if anybody on staff has any ideas, if our police force has any potential solutions, if we can invest in infrastructure that makes this town safe, all of those things are worth accomplishing. It's good to be here with everybody. It's good to see your faces. It's good to talk to you. I just want you to know that I care. So with that, I'll yield my time, and I'll talk to you all later.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Excuse me, Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Lingua, Ward 3.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everybody. One of the things that I'm going to talk about tonight is the latest with the CCAR CDC. The CDC met last Tuesday on the 1st of February, and what I've just posted to the chat is their plan for looking to help raise money over the long term. And I want to make sure everyone had an opportunity to look at that, as this has been an ongoing project. Right now, as you'll see, this is in the draft form right now and will be finalized over the next few months. I thought this time would be a good time to share. On the agenda for last Tuesday, they dealt with the issue about dealing with getting a permit renewed for some electrical work for the hot water heater. This is in relation to the Sarvis Cafe, which we'll touch base a little bit more on in just a minute. The patio construction has been approved, and just recently the concrete supports have been poured because the weather was just good enough to get that done. The awning materials are in stock, and that will be worked on at some point in the near future. The United Methodist Church of College Park is ready with 3 students for culinary arts training over there. As well, Pat and the board were looking to see about the feasibility of identifying 3 3 residents in town. This is still in the planning phases and still trying to get the logistics figured out, but they would like to be able to offer an ability for 3 folks in town to be able to attend the Sarvis Cafe program at a reduced or at no cost. As that comes up more, I will be happy to pass that along. The local Starbucks near this area, it's located over in Lanham. The manager is looking to provide training at the Sarvis Coffee Station. Prince George's Community College training teams identified folks for front and programs also for the front and the back of the house. And one of the things that is completed, and Ms. Barnes, this is where you can help me here, is the new logo design. If you could please share that with us on the screen so everyone can see. These are the 2 different designs that will be going up on the windows and or material. It's been a process with company Lightbright, and this is the final iteration after about 2-3 rounds of looking at designs, and that's what you'll be seeing up at the cafe and on materials that are printed as well. The CDC also submitted a letter of interest to the Meyer Foundation to apply for a grant for general operating monies for $300,000 over 3 years. The CDC was awarded $1,000 from the Starbucks Foundation Neighborhood Grants Program. As well, the GoFundMe for Greater Riverdale Cares and Route 1 Communities Care. Donations have reached over 33,000, and that exceeded the goal. The Sarvis or the Greater Riverdale Cares Route 1 Cares meal program has been expanded, as everyone knows, into University Park, College Park, and Hyattsville. The GoFundMe goal, the 33,000 was the GoFundMe amount raised, pardon me. And the goal has been reset to $200,000. The art sale that CCAR had has raised over $4,000 for the Greater Riverdale Cares Route 1 Communities Cares restaurant meal program. CCAR CDC was very appreciative of the town's initial donation of $5,000 toward the program. As well, they received from College Park a grant of $50,000. In terms of applications, the CDC has put into the Chesapeake Bay Trust a grant application was submitted for $133,736. There's also a application in for a CAFRS grant, and that was submitted for $40,000. And there was a call with LISC, L-I-S-C, and it's escaping my memory right now what that stands for. I will find that and pass that along to staff. There's a discussion because there's an interest to fund general operations and the amount of $40,000. There is, let me see what else. They're working on their newsletter. The winter edition is under development as well. They're also working on the annual report. And as well, the other thing that the CDC has been working on is updating their manual for their standards of excellence. And that has been a ongoing process now, better part of 9 months. And it's coming to its conclusion. Should be concluded over the next few months after that. In terms of at the office, there's social distancing, masks are required. They're doing temperature readings. And there's also a combination of remote and office operations. The executive committee is going to be meeting on February 15th. And the next CCAR board meeting, which will be on Zoom, will be March 1st, 2022 at 6:30 p.m. One other item I would like to ask Ms. Barnes if she could bring up now, being that we were talking about, as I'm sure you've seen all this talk of numbers and grants, applications, and amounts put in, is for the Sarvis Cafe, in order to help fund operations there, the TDC is going to have a tile program. And as Ms. Barnes could please throw up that image of the tiles. You're looking at a number of selections they were looking at. They're going with the middle selection, the lighter tile in the middle. And folks can, for a sum of $300, you can get a tile, and you have 3 lines to engrave on there your name or your group or anything like that. And it will be applied, and it will be on the wall at the Sarvis Cafe for all to see and all to appreciate the contribution made. And I do hope that we as a municipality and or we as a council as a whole, or if individual members feel so inclined to participate in this tile program, I think that would be a great thing to do. And hopefully we can talk about more about that in the future, be that under new business or unfinished business, whichever the case may be. And with that, as long as it was, I will conclude the ward report.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Let's move on to Councilmember Sadiq, Ward 4.
Nothing to report.
Thank you. Councilmember Mejia sent me a text message that she had an emergency and had to duck out. So that will bring us to Councilmember Mayer's Ward 6.
Good evening, Mayor, Council, and members of the community. No ward reports at this time.
Thank you, Councilmember Mears. That brings us to public comments on non-agenda items and consent agenda items. Are there any public comments? Okay, I don't see any. Let's move on to the consent agenda. Consent agenda are items that are not debated. There's simply a motion to approve all consent agenda items simultaneously. May I please have such a motion?
So moved.
Motion by Councilmember Foe. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, I missed who the second was.
Councilmember Mears.
Councilmember Mayers. I'll give it to Councilmember Mayers. Very good. I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 501. Let's move on now to legislative action items. Before we dive into item 1, I'm just going to take a moment to remind everyone, this seems to be an item that there's a lot of passion about. And so I'm just going to remind everyone of what the rules of order are, because I think that this is the time when strict enforcement is important to have a civil and productive discussion. So all members of the public are honorary members and as such must follow the rules of order as members of the council must at all times. Should you have a comment, please address it to myself and not to anyone else, not any council members, simply to me as Mr. Mayor. Thank you. All comments must address the content of the motion. You are not allowed to wander off into different topics, different issues. Please focus your comments on the content of the motion. Do not refer to any members. This is true for all members of the public. Do not refer to other members of the public. Do not refer to elected members by name. Refer to them by position, by some other means, generally a neutral or positive, such as my honorable colleague who lives on Tuckerman Street or something of that sort. Very important, do not question the motives of other members. This is true for members of the public. This is true for members of the council. Do not question anyone else's motives. And lastly, in order to have a conversation, a discussion that winds up, each person is allowed to speak for up to 10 minutes. They are not to be interrupted during this time. They're not supposed to be conversations. Each person is allowed 2 10-minute testimonies. And I have a timer this evening, and it's set for 9.5 minutes. The sound you will hear is an indication that you need to wrap up. So with that, let's move to legislative action item number 1, a motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-01, renaming of Field of Dreams.
Are you waiting for a motion, Mr. Mayor?
I'm waiting for a motion.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to motion that we put forward resolution 2022-R-01 pertaining to the naming of a town park, town-owned park to honor Adam and Emily Plummer.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
Second.
Hey,
I'll give it
motion.
to Councilwoman Myers.
Okay, motion by Councilmember Foe, seconded by Mayors. Councilmember Foe, it is traditional that the maker of the motion is allowed to speak first. Please make your first round of comments.
Good evening, everyone. I am tremendously honored to be here this evening in February 7th to honor Black History Month, something that we should all be willing to celebrate. This is literally the honor of a lifetime for me. I, as a young child, grew up in Western Pennsylvania, rural Western Pennsylvania, white Western Pennsylvania, trying to figure out an identity that I would be proud of, right? When I was young, I was always trying to communicate with my father, trying to bridge that gap, and athletics was frequently a way that we would do it. So what I did is I found myself in the hallways of Saxonburg Elementary School, finding the library and picking up any autobiography that I possibly could. When I was in 2nd grade, there was an autobiography about Roberto Clemente that I read. And ultimately what that did was transfuse this, or bring together these ideologies of athletics and social assistance, and it blew my mind. Right, I was reading a baseball book, and then all of a sudden it ends with him dying, trying to assist victims of an earthquake in Nicaragua, and all of a sudden my world was changed. In 3rd grade, I read an autobiography about Dr. Martin Luther King. It was a blue book. And for the first time, growing up in a white community, I started to have these dialogues with my parents about race, right? It was not something that I had encountered on a day-to-day basis. And I didn't understand how somebody could be discounted based upon the color of their skin. And it blew up my world, right? I honestly tell my students that in 3rd grade, I knew I was going into social studies, right? Fast forward a lot of years, I don't even want to count how many years, I am a teacher at Carl Sandburg Middle School. I teach U.S. history from 1865 to present day. So my curriculum every single year starts with the Civil War and Reconstruction in this country's history. These books led me to the classroom, right? These books led me to decide that I didn't want to teach where I grew up. I wanted to teach in a culturally diverse classroom. I wanted to live in a culturally diverse community. And I am lucky to say that I am here today teaching at Carl Sandburg Middle School, one of the most culturally diverse schools in all of the state of Virginia. And I live in Riverdale Park, Maryland. And we all know that this is a racially diverse community. So before I get started today, what I would like to do is read the resolution in place, because I think it is beautiful. For the purpose of naming the town-owned park in honor of recognition of Adam Francis Plummer, who was enslaved at the Riversdale Plantation, located on land which is now within the corporate boundaries of the town of Riverdale Park, and his wife, Emily Sanders Plummer, who was enslaved at the Three Sisters Plantation on land which is now in Lanham, Maryland. Whereas the town of Riverdale Park is committed to policies, programs, and initiatives that aim to undo the effects of systemic racism. And whereas Adam and Emily Plummer lived extraordinary lives, suffering unimaginable horrors, conditions, and losses. And whereas the naming of the park by the town of Riverdale Park becomes the first formal action by the town to perpetually highlight the lives of enslaved persons. And whereas the naming of the town-owned park in honor of Adam and Emily Plummer embodies the town's values to create a community where the inherent worth and dignity of each person is recognized and celebrated. And whereas this formal action to name a town park for enslaved persons in part answers the call that President Gerald Ford made and that is memorialized in the town's annual Black History Month proclamation for the public to seize the opportunity to honor the too often neglected accomplishments of Black Americans in every area of endeavor throughout our history. And whereas the town has the authority to name town-owned assets to include town-owned parks, and the town is in the process of developing a highly visible passive park that is bounded by Tuckerman Street, Lafayette Avenue, and River Tech Courts. Now, therefore, may it be resolved that the mayor and council of the town of Riverdale Park hereby name the park described herein as the Adam and Emily Plummer Park. So before we get into what my arguments in support of this are, what I want to do is thank a couple of attendees here tonight that are supporting this initiative. First and foremost, I would love to say thank you to Reverend Jerome Fowler. I don't know that he's on the call. It's a little bit difficult to communicate Zoom to a post 70-year-old man. He said he was going to try and be here, but he has kept this narrative alive for years and years. Additional family members present tonight, Vi Sharp Jones, who opened this communication with me. We've been talking almost every other day about this, and they are excited to see restorative justice provided to their family. I also want to thank Director Maya Davis from Riversdale for being here tonight. If you haven't met Director Davis, get yourself to Riversdale ASAP and realize what's going on in this community. And last but not least, I want to thank Doug McElraith, who is, for all intents and purposes, our town's historian. He's worked for the University of Maryland. He's lived here for 30 years. You might recognize him from, he does house studies in the community, and he's currently working on the University of Maryland's 1856 project to apply restorative justice to African-American communities. And I want to read his statements. He was here earlier, and I hope to be able to bring him back, but this is what he wanted to say. I wholeheartedly support the proposal to name the Field of Dreams the Adam and Emily Plummer Park. As someone who has conducted historical research on our community of Riverdale Park and its neighbors for almost 30 years, I have come across many interesting individuals. None, however, are as inspirational and as motivational as the life stories of Adam, Francis, and Emily Plummer. Their triumph over the dehumanization of slavery and emergence after the Civil War as founders of local institutions and a vibrant Black community is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit. Adam Plummer's handwritten memoir has been considered of such importance that the Smithsonian institution deemed it significant enough to acquire for their collections. To understand that Adam and Emily once walked upon the very ground that is now Riverdale Park is what makes this proposal so appropriate. By adopting this new name, we recognize that the fields around the Riversdale mansion were worked involuntarily by people who had their own dreams. Emily and Adam Plummer were among the fortunate who realized their dream of reuniting their family that had been torn apart by the horrors of slavery. Their story provides an inspiring example of the long struggle for justice that had its roots right here in Riverdale Park. I would love to be able to provide a brief summary of the Plummer family. Mr. Mayor, am I on the clock at 10 minutes?
You have 1 minute and 45 seconds left.
All right. So in 1829, at the age of 10, Adam was brought to Riversdale from the Calvert family. His his grandfather, Cupid, actually was a veteran who fought in the Revolutionary War. But it is just remarkable that he was born into slavery. In May 1841, Adam and Emily were married. She was 8 miles away in Lanham on a territory that is now covered by a high school in Lanham. I was talking to Council Member Glaros last night about this. In 1855, the family attempted to escape to Canada, or they were planning to attempt to escape to Canada. And their plans were foiled by an aunt at Three Sisters Plantation in Lanham. And what that resulted in was the family being separated for roughly the next 13 years at a distance of about 20 miles. What is remarkable about this story is that Adam was taught to learn to read and write by John Bowser, a former slave and preacher, secretly taught Adam Francis Plummer how to read and write. So what this does is make this situation in this community incredibly unique.
30 seconds, Councilmember.
Incredibly unique because we have the written word provided by a former slave, which is not very common. And in the state of Maryland, it was illegal. So why the Plumbers? Because they are an incredible family that is devoted to love and connectivity. Why a park? Because it can be a place of reflection, a beautiful space where we can honor those formerly enslaved in our community. As a town, we have to come to a reckoning that there is a mural that exists in the town of Edmonston that has the drawing of Adam Francis Plummer, and he's looking directly at a sign welcoming to Riverdale Park that has a plantation that enslaved him. We also need to recognize that we have 50 to 70 unnamed slaves who lived in the general area on the land that we now call our homes that are buried in our community in unmarked graves. And we need to honor those individuals, and we need to do it during Black History Month so that we can show the rest of Prince George's counties, this is how we do things in Riverdale Park. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember. I actually misspoke. You had 1 minute left at the time I said you had 30
Why
seconds.
you rushed me through it? I tried. You're fine. You're fine.
You did
Thank
fine. Are there additional council comments? Councilmember Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Council Member Foe, for that impassioned introduction of the resolution here. I really admire the work you've done on this, and of course, even more so the work that the Plummer family and the descendants of Adam and Emily Plummer, their efforts to continue the story over the years, over the decades, over the century, and make sure that just how remarkable this family was. Is a story that's not lost to history. And I think, due to all the things Councilman Foe referred to, and many other associated evils with the institution of enslavement. Doing our part as a town to ensure this story continues and remains to be told, taking on some of that from the Plummer family. It's the least we can do. I'm struck by the fact that the only current evidence of the Plummer family living in this community right now that I know of, please correct me if anyone knows that I'm wrong. The only way it's memorialized is on a book in the Riversdale plantation that lists the itemized properties and their values. A century later, the only way that we're acknowledging this is still through the monetary value of human beings. And that is grossly offensive to me. And I think, I hope everyone in Riverdale Park would find that unbelievable and something that needs to be corrected immediately. I think naming them and remembering them in some way other than monetized property is the least we can do. And I also want to point out that park that we call what we call Field of Dreams, as the accompanying materials from the staff here point out, it doesn't have a name. It's not officially named Field of Dreams. I get that's what people have called it for a while. But it's not like we're taking a name off of something and putting something else on and changing something that already exists. Giving the name of Adam and Emily Plummer to this park, a park that contains literally their blood, sweat, and tears as they toiled that soil. That's the least we can do, is to put their name on a park that doesn't currently have a name. Like, this isn't that much to ask. Yeah, I'm just struck by all the work that you've done, council, or that the council members done. And I know he's shared this link with me, and I know others from the Smithsonian on the Plummer family. I hope folks will take some time to read it. I'm putting it in the chat here. It contains narratives of the Plummer family, but also of the general conditions of enslavement in Southern Maryland at the time when the Plummer family was enslaved here. And one of the things that really strikes me in our efforts today is the quote from the preface at the start of the Smithsonian document, from the preface of the book Out of the Depths of the Triumph on the Cross, which is a narrative of the history of the Plummer family. Not many copies exist, like the council member said, the handwritten version, I believe, is in the Smithsonian, but there's a quote here from the preface by Nellie Arnold Palmer, where she says, "As I listened from childhood to the story of my parents, eldest sister and brother, of their suffering and sorrow, their fear and anxiety, their loneliness, failure, and disappointment, their doubt, darkness, and torment that the sin of slavery had caused them, I've desired with desire to write it, that others, though discouraged from a different cause, might prove faithful by doing right, and thus overcome." I think that's very powerful and relevant to what we're talking about here today, and I hope we can do a lot more than name this park after the Plummer family. But that's the motion that's before us, and I think approving it enthusiastically is the least we can do in remembrance of the Plummer family. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Well within your time. Is there any other comment from the council? Okay. Are there public comments? Please, if you wish to comment publicly, please state your name and address for the record. Mr. Haynes.
There we go. Hello.
Hello.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, for giving us this opportunity to voice our support for this motion. As parents of 2 African-American children that live a stone throw from the Riverdale mansion, our kids can be found at any given day playing at the grounds of the building that is the Riversdale mansion. We've taught them about the history of the building. We've taught them about the history of the grounds. We've taught them about the people that were in that building and how this town came to be. What we're asking and we are hoping is that the town will take the step now to acknowledge the full history and all those who resided at Riversdale. It's not just about a beautiful building that we can have picnics or the garden that we can go to and get beautiful flowers or where my kids can sled after a snowstorm. It's also about the folks who took care of that building and the garden that we get to enjoy today. It is only fitting that we, this generation of residents, take the step that is needed to start acknowledging all the former residents of this great town. We cannot continue to say that we're inclusive town or we are a diverse town, but yet we're okay to delete some of the folks and the subset of folks that made this town. So we ask you and the council to please approve this motion and name the town-owned park the Adam and Emily Plummer Park. We thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Haynes. Next person with their hand up is Christopher Fike.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor.
Good evening.
My name is Chris Fike. I am a Ward 2 resident at 4905 Queensbury Road. Wanted to voice my support for the motion put forward by Ward 2 councilman. From my point of view, it seems that on a daily basis, on the national scale, we are hearing arguments of what history or what versions of history need to be taught or publicly displayed. I believe it is important for our town to prioritize that ensuring the contribution of all groups to our community's history are documented. History can be uncomfortable and sometimes hard for us to confront. However, history is something that we must always learn from. With this in mind, I couldn't think of a better way to document the contributions of the Plummer family and the dozens of others that worked these lands than to rename the Field of Dreams in their honor. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Mr. Fike, for your testimony. Ms. Maya Davis.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just want to address the council and let them know that I fully support the renaming of the Field of Dreams Park to the Adam and Emily Francis Plummer Park. I, having come to Riversdale after working in the study of the legacy of slavery in our great state of Maryland, have really engaged with thousands of stories of enslaved individuals and have worked to uplift the stories of people like Frederick Douglass and Harriet Tubman. Adam Francis Plummer and Emily Plummer actually are our Harriet Tubman and Frederick Douglass. And so we have an opportunity to really take this to the next level by highlighting the stories. And I'm really excited to see Plummer descendant, Miss Violetta Sharps Jones, here with us this evening, because it really speaks to the testament of people that are out there. And as someone stated so eloquently earlier, we have a responsibility to the descendants of these enslaved families to recognize and honor and commemorate the lives and legacy of the work they did. They essentially built Riversdale from the very date of its construction starting in 1801 and worked it until Maryland emancipation in 1864. So with that being said, I am very pleased that Councilman Aaron Foe reached out to me, and I stand in support of this effort. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Davis. Dan Golinge. Hope I pronounced that correctly.
Collins, yes. Good evening, Mr. Mayor and town council members. I'm here with my wife, Maura. We live at 4607 Tuckerman Street. And others who've spoken before us have said everything much more eloquently than I can, but I just want to voice our strong support of the resolution in renaming the Field of Dreams Park in honor of Adam and Emily Plummer. So I will leave it at that, but thank you very much for your time, and I hope the resolution passes.
Thank you very much for your brief testimony. That helps. Ms. Eve Schumann.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Hi to the Riverdale Park Town Council and all the folks on the Zoom call. I just wanted to express, I'm sorry, I'm Eve Schumann. This is my husband, Jay Schumann. We are residents of Ward 1 over on 43rd Street, and we're calling in to express our very strong support for this resolution and to thank the town for even considering it. And of course, a big thank you to Councilmember Foe for spearheading this. I just wanted to sort of speak briefly a little bit, just about as a resident how much this would mean to us and our family. I have a deep love of history. I was a dual major in philosophy, politics, law, and history, so I have a degree in it from college. And even as a child, at 10 years old, I did on my own. It wasn't a class project, but it was a family tree. And I was so excited to do it. I got my cousins to help me out with it. And at the time, I was so disappointed because I could not go past my great-grandmother. I have always felt that I didn't know my own history. I've always felt very unrooted, unmoored, so to speak, and a little lost. And in this country, I don't want to speak for all people of color or all black people, but in this country, it's very easy to feel like you don't belong. Our history books tell us, they show us the great deeds of men and women who often don't look like me. They tell us that this country is a great country, but they don't say that it's been done on the backs of others. It's great to, it's easier to climb high if you're doing it on someone else's back, right? And so this feeling of feeling like this country isn't for us, like we don't belong here and we don't really belong anywhere, it's really exacerbated because all throughout, you'll see statues of Confederate soldiers. I mean, even in Maryland, I believe the last Confederate statue was just removed in this past September. It was the Talbot Boy statue over in Talbot County. And and these are monuments to hatred. These are monuments that tells us that we're less than human. And for us to now start the process of going the other way, of saying, of acknowledging the folks that actually helped build this country, of saying that yes, you belong here. It means so much. We have girls who are 4 and our younger one is going to be 2, and it is so inspiring that they can play in this park. They can look and see someone who looked like them and who is a part of the fabric of this community. It tells us and tells everybody here that we belong just as much as anybody else. And so I don't want to take up too much more time. I know it's late, but I just want to say thank you so much for doing this, and I look forward to when we can finally cut that ribbon and make it happen. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you, Ms. Schumann. You were well within your time limits. Much appreciated. Next person with their hand up is Abby.
Mr. Mayor, I want to speak up to support this legislation. I'm a resident of Riverdale, Ward 1, and in doing so, uplift to put a pin on some of what our local leaders have already said, which I support. First, Councilmember Smith said this is the least we can do. And I think that that is absolutely true. We have local signage, which really celebrates Riversdale and memorializes the Calverts, but limited public acknowledgement locally that Riversdale was a former plantation. This is not actually getting beyond what happened there. It's avoiding the conversation entirely. And like Ms. Schuman just said, this deprives people, including children who deserve to know their own worth, of understanding our community history and the recognition of individual human lives. Second, I really want to thank the town staff for putting this together with Councilmember Foe, and want to appreciate a line in particular. The naming of a park by the town of Riverdale Park becomes the first formal action by the town to perpetually highlight the lives of enslaved persons, unquote. This is an incredibly important point to me, and maybe the point. This should just be the beginning. And I would love to hear from council members and from town staff about what residents can do to use this community history to discuss where we want to be in the future. Thank you, Mayor, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Abby. Ms. Cronk, you're next.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Thompson, council, my fellow neighbors, town staff, and other members of the community. I also want to speak in support of this resolution. I don't have anything to add that other folks haven't already said, except that I do want to agree with the piece that Abby just raised previously about this being the first step of many. I'm so deeply grateful to Councilmember Foe for not only raising this resolution, but connecting with the staff of Riversdale, connecting with the family members of the plumbers. And I really look forward to this being not only the first step of many symbolic steps, but the first step of many concrete actionable steps. I think that there is a really beautiful path that could be set forward for this community to engage in a reparations project with descendants of the Plummer family. And while a resolution is just, one symbolic piece of that puzzle, as we've heard tonight already, many residents, I think, will really appreciate that symbolic step. And I think that many of us really look forward to concrete reparative steps in the future. So I heartily support the resolution. I heartily support more action in the future, and look forward to working with my council member and the full town council to keep that momentum going. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Cronk. Ms. Jones, an honored guest this evening. Thank you for joining us.
Good evening, Mayor and Councilman, and thank you, Mr. Foe, for inviting me. I am a descendant of the Plummer family, and my heart is just full today that this appears that it's going to go forward. I am a fifth generation Prince George's County resident. I was born and raised right down the road from Riverdale in a Black community that I know and will always know as Lakeland, which is now part of College Park. I am involved with the Lakeland Community Heritage Project, Restorative Justice for Lakeland, the 1856 Project, the Lynching Project. I guess you can get my drift. I'm very interested in our history, not just my history, our history. Growing up in Lakeland, College Park area, I was in and out of my family homes that were in Riverdale, Bladensburg, Hyattsville, North Brentwood. So I'm very familiar with the people that first came there, and most of them came there and they were family members that had been enslaved. And they came and they found and made Lakeland their home, and other places along the Route 1 corridor their home. And to see today that we can finally do something to give them the identity that they so deserve. I encourage all of you to access the Plummer Family Diaries. They're online. I know the book is out of print, but you can get excerpts online, or if you can make a trip to the Anacostia Museum and see the documents. It is such a beautiful document to see the daily writing of what it was like for that family to live that life, to take that journey. And for that reason, I'm extremely proud that this is a start. There are many things that we need to do. It's not enough to talk about these things. We have to follow through and make things happen. We have to make sure that the generations that are behind us, they will know the history of those residents of the Riverdale and all of those Black communities, and how important it is to recognize them and honor them in this way. So for that reason, I thank you all very much.
Thank you, Ms. Jones. I'll let you know that I downloaded a scanned version of the diary over the weekend. There are a couple of broken links I had to navigate past, but I look forward to reading it. Thank you so much for being here this evening. Are there additional public comments? Ms. McAllister.
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I'm just going to read from the email that I sent to the council. I think it summarizes my concerns with the process of this resolution of the renaming the Field of Dreams. I live at 4705 Tuckerman. I live directly across the street from the Field of Dreams. Lived here for about 5 years now, and I do remember the sign was stolen multiple times. The Field of Dreams sign was stolen. And so I think the town just stopped putting it up. But anyways, my concerns, and I speak on behalf of my husband too, Ryan McAllister. I think he's going to give separate remarks. They stem primarily from the absence of any recent community input. There's a lot of people that are talking tonight, and I applaud everything they've said, but we were not notified of any of this. And my other concern is it's discounting a survey from 2 years ago from a design charrette when there were 45 people who gave input regarding the name of the Field of Dreams. So in 2019, we participated in a design charrette for the redevelopment of the Field of Dreams, and we participated in the survey. One of the survey questions asked residents what they thought of the Field of Dreams' name. And of the 45 respondents, 40% said to keep the name, do not change the name. 35% said to rename it after a local historical figure. 16% said to name it after local nature or animals. 7% said to name it after Airco. And 2% said not to name it after a person at all. To summarize the responses, the overwhelming majority, 65% of the respondents said either do not change the name or to change it other than something of a historical person, other than the name of a historical person. The proposed name, Adam and Emily Plummer Park, does not reflect the 2019 community inputs solicited by the town to reimagine the park. The council agenda packet provided to you council members does not include those survey results. While we support the intent to acknowledge and celebrate the lives of Adam and Emily Plummer, we believe that the mechanisms of acknowledgement and the renaming of the Field of Dreams need to be presented, please, to the residents of Riverdale Park for their input. Over the weekend, we knocked on at least a dozen neighbors' doors, or we called or we texted, and we asked them if they knew about the town's plans to rename the Field of Dreams. Not a single person knew about it. I live directly across the street from the park, and I did not know about it. The only reason I know about the plans to rename the park is I happened to look at the meeting agenda for tonight's meeting. I consider myself fairly active in the town. I attend meetings as my schedule permits, and I serve on several town councils and boards. My husband and I both do. We give a lot to the town, and we didn't know about this. I guess I'm disappointed that we weren't notified or asked for input. And like I said, we live across the street. We think that we think a lot of residents will have opinions on the renaming of the Field of Dreams, and many may have other good ideas about ways to acknowledge and celebrate the plumbers. For instance, we could name the town hall, we could name other town assets, the trail, roads. We just haven't even talked about this. So I ask that this resolution to rename the Field of Dreams is deferred for a minimum of 90 days to solicit community input. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. McAllister. Just to correct one minor issue, there was material added to the packet just today that included information about the survey that you referenced. So the council has had an opportunity to see it. Mr. McAllister?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you all can see me or hear me.
Yes.
Okay. So my name is Ryan McAllister. I also live at 4705 Tuckerman Street. I support the information that my wife presented. I do have some additional information that I wanted to share, both historically and some of the evidence that's been presented. I believe there's been some additional information, certainly with the timing of this having not more than about 48 to 72 hours to start looking into some of the information that's been presented. I do agree with my wife. I think this is a great opportunity to rename a town asset. I just don't believe that the park is that asset. And the reasons why is because of the survey results. That was 45 people. 65% is 30 people that were in that meeting who said they did not want to change the name of the park or change it to something other than a historical person or historical event. The people that we did speak with, which are neighbors, those 12 neighbors are directly adjacent and abut the park property. All of those neighbors were involved in the 2019 charrette and planning and the reimagining of the park. And so the park's name, there's also been some misinformation. You know, the park has been referred to the Field of Dreams all the way back to 2004. I realized that there isn't a monument sign out there calling it the Field of Dreams, but there has been signs placed there, metal signs, as early as 2017 when we purchased our home here. In 2019, when the town referred to the reimagining of the Field of Dreams, as well as the resolution before you, renaming the Field of Dreams. That is what the park is named. And that is what the community knows it as. So I think that's the first point of information I just wanted to bring to your attention. Back in 2004, when the town tried to sell the property and it was referred to as the Town of Dream or the Field of Dreams, that was one of the first recognizable signs of the name of the Field of Dreams. But the point is that there's been a lack of communication throughout this process. The 2019 survey and charrette that was done provided the first opportunity for residents to reimagine this park. There was a lot of people who attended. And so, you know, we have a lot of other town assets that could be considered. And as my wife mentioned, we just haven't had that conversation. There's been a complete lack of communications. Many of the residents that are on here today, it sounds like they have been reached out to. But I'm surprised that the 7 property owners that directly front this property have not been discussed or have been reached out to. And it sounds like discussions have been going on for quite a few months. And another point of information is the communication that has gone on. Most of the residents on this block have been here for 20 plus years or more, some upwards of 30. Most of them don't have access to social media, don't have smartphones, don't have laptops, don't have email addresses. Other things that prohibit them from being involved in this process is language barriers. And so this has been a complete change in the direction of this park. This park was never envisioned to be a historical park. based on those results and what was originally envisioned during the charrette process. And so these are some of the fallacies in moving forward today, and why we're asking for the town to consider a 90-day stay or deferment until more input can be provided. We're open to that communication and that discussion. But honestly, the input's already been had from the visioning process. That was in 2019. The community said what they wanted. And that was do not change the name. So we're in opposition to this resolution, not on the basis of the information it's trying to bring to call for the town, but I think because we want to look forward to future discussions, and if this is the forum to do so, to discuss this further, then maybe we should talk about what other town assets are available for this name. Because this park has already been named, and it has a name, and the residents have spoken that they want to keep that name. And so, you know, there are other council members in the town that can discuss this. You know, we regularly participate in these meetings and participate in that charrette. One of the other points of information, the evidence that's been presented, Councilmember Foe indicated that in his presentation that records of the plantation extend the property all the way out to Lanham, Maryland. I work in Lanham, Maryland. I ride my bike through Lanham, Maryland. That's 8 miles away, almost 9. I think it's 8.8 miles. So that's a pretty wide-ranging area. Through all the information that's been presented as evidence, I have not seen a direct link or nexus to this specific piece of property. So if there's nothing that ties this property to the name, then why don't we talk about other town assets, and maybe there's something bigger, maybe there's something we haven't thought of yet. And a park might not be the appropriate name because, you know, this one has already been spoken for. I don't refute the name. I think it's a great name, but I think that the park is not the place for it based on this information. So the other opportunities, you know, town hall, roads, bridges, the road in front of the mansion, other parks, trails, the elementary school. We have Riverdale Elementary School. And so there are other town assets that haven't even been considered. And again, because we haven't had that discussion. I did mention about some of the different lacks of communication. Some of the other partners that I haven't heard from, the Anacostia Trails Heritage Association, or ATHA, right there in Hyattsville. Park and Planning's Historic and Cultural Division. They have their own archaeologists and cultural resources section. Other town residents that are directly abutting the park. What are other municipal park departments doing? What is their policy for naming parks? I think this is a knee-jerk reaction that we are doing. And to give a little background of that, you know, I don't even know who our parks manager is with the town. So there's no real evidence in the staff report about the basis of this name. And, you know, I realize the historical aspect, but there's other things I think that need to be considered. And so I think I've done some research over this weekend of 2 years worth of the town criers, social media posts, evidence of other information. This is the first time in less than 72 hours that this name was provided. So if we're going to change the rules of what was originally envisioned for this park, we'd like to see the Neighborhood Design Center re-engaged into that discussion to relook at this as a possible alternative to the park concept. You'll note in your staff reports the concepts that were included. None of them mention any historical aspects of this park. Most of them were nature-based, as you can see. And one of the last things I can cite is, you know, there's a resolution that's cited that references diversity inclusion. And the fact is that the resolution cites the inclusivity and inclusion of the community. This resolution does not state the community support. It states the council's ability to name assets, which we understand. But inclusivity starts also with the community members that are also directly affected, and that hasn't happened either. So for those reasons, I'd ask you to oppose this name until more discussions can occur, as well as other opportunities. within the town to utilize this name, but for other assets, and more information can be provided. Increased community support and community notification. And so those conversations can occur. I yield my time. We were able to have another property owner directly adjacent to us who directly abuts the park. Former council members, Sue Sheehan. Mr. Mayor, I'd like to turn my time over to her to speak. Due to the pandemic, we were not able to open our home to the rest of our neighbors. But we were able to get one, and we did let some of those neighbors know, but for the reasons I mentioned in my communication, they are not able to attend this call today. So, Mr. Mayor, if I can turn it over to Sue Sheehan with your approval.
Excuse me a moment. So traditionally, and in the rules of order, we allow people to speak in the order they raised their hand, or they stood, technically. And there are, well, Kate Kelly took hers down, but Mr. Comstock is in front of Ms. Sheehan. Ms. Sheehan, can you wait through Mr. Comstock's testimony?
Certainly I will. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Mr. Comstock?
Yeah, hi, Mr. Mayor, I'll be quick about it. My name is Andrew Comstock. I'm a Ward 2 resident. I live at 4811 Rittenhouse Street, and my wife and I just wanted to express our support for this motion. We think it's a wonderful idea. We think it would be a wonderful and fitting name for the park. We love, we love celebrating this community, and we think it's a long time coming to have some kind of remembrance for the history of the community. And I also just wanted to mention that there's been a lot of that my wife and I were at the previous 2019 meeting where there was discussions about what we should be doing with the Field of Dreams and what we should be naming the Field of Dreams, which we were told was somewhat of a temporary name. And I don't remember what we voted for at the time, but I would tell you wholeheartedly now that if this name had been, or if this idea had been put forward, then we would have absolutely been in favor of it. So just wanted to put that out there as, people who were at the event and had direct experience with the event, that, this wasn't part of what we were, part of the options we were really given. And if we were, we would have totally supported it then as we do now. And thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Comstock. Hold on just a second, Ms. Sheehan.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm Sue Sheehan, 4707 Tuckerman Street, and I am one of the homeowners that lives across from the Field of Dreams for 54 years. In my 54 years, I have seen many changes in the town and in the field. Originally, it was the Boys and Girls Club, where many sports were played and enjoyed by our town residents and many clubs that came to the area. I am not opposed to the recommendation that is being made to honor these people and the history of their lives. I think, and I am agreeing with some of the comments made by my neighbors, and would urge, and one of the things that I am most disturbed about was no contact our council member to the residents the 6 houses that are across the street from the field. I would hope that you would take into their consideration what the McAllisters have said in their remarks, and due to the essence of the lateness of the time, I agree with them and wholeheartedly would implore you to reconsider this recommendation. Thank you very much and have a good evening.
Thank you, Ms. Sheehan, for your testimony. Ms. Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and the assembled. My name is Kate Kelly. I live at 4522 Tuckerman Street. I am not a neighbor, unfortunately, of the park, but I do support wholeheartedly the resolution to change the name. I can think of no better way to start to make amends, to reparations for the evil that has been done in this country. And I think instead of looking back, we should be looking forward. And so I would urge everyone on the council to support this. And I am finished talking for tonight.
Thank you, Ms. Kelly. You were well within your time limit. Much appreciated. Are there additional public or council comments on this motion? Okay. I will, given that there are no additional comments, I'm going to move to a roll call vote on the item. Council Member Smith,
Yes.
Council Member Foe,
Aye.
Council Member Lingua,
I abstain.
Council Member Siddiq,
Aye.
Council Member Mejia was here for a little while. Is she back? Yes. And Council Member Mayers.
Aye.
And I am told by the rules of order that I'm not supposed to vote unless there's my vote makes a difference. And I've been extraordinarily Robert's rules this evening, keeping everyone in line. And so I'm going to do that, but I will say that I do support the renaming of this park personally. So the motion passes 5-0-2. Thank you. Next item on the agenda. Motion to authorize the town manager to enter into an agreement with Clinton Sewer Expert for an amount not to exceed $189,575 for Longfellow Street Storm Drainage Improvement Project, COP number 20PP01.
Director Lewis, can you walk us through this, please?
Yes, and good evening, everyone. This agenda item is before you tonight for two actions. One, to authorize the town manager to sign an agreement with Clinton Sewer Expert Incorporated to conduct the Longfellow Street storm drainage improvements for an amount not to exceed $189,575. This amount reflects a 10% contingency. We're also here to ask for your authorization for the town manager to sign Amendment 2 to the 2018 Municipal Participation Agreement between the town and county to increase the project funding by $50,000 to a total $250,000 and to extend the project completion due date to April 16, 2023, which allows ample time to complete the project and for the town to receive its full reimbursement of grant funds from the county. 7 companies responded to the invitation to bid to construct the improvements. The bids range from about $137,000 to $218,000. The 3 lowest responsive bids were reviewed. The lower bidder did not demonstrate the level of experience needed on the project, so that bid was rejected. Of the 2 remaining companies, the staff selected Clinton's Sewer Expert for council consideration. The company had the highest bid of the 3 lowest bids at $172,341, but it is the only company, actually out of the 7 that submitted a bid, that met the county requirement established in the Municipal Participation Agreement to be both a certified minority business enterprise and county-based small business. The company's bid is higher than the project engineer's cost estimate and higher than the balance of the county grant, which at this time is $143,370. Additionally, as mentioned in last week's council meeting, the April 6th timeline for project completion will be extremely difficult to meet. In fact, before bids were due, several potential bidders asked whether the schedule could be extended. In response, the staff extended the project schedule from 45 days to 75 days through an addendum to the bid solicitation. The higher bid and the longer project schedule necessitate a second amendment to the Municipal Participation Agreement Again, to increase the budget by $50,000 and to extend the due date to April 16, 2023. This timeline will more than ensure the project is completed and that there is ample opportunity for the town to comply with the county reimbursement process. In order to keep this process moving towards construction, the town needs to fund the increase up front while the request for additional funding from the county is pending. There are sufficient funds available in the current capital budget to cover the additional costs because several funded projects will not be completed in the fiscal year. If the county does not approve the additional costs, the council will need to approve the allocation of additional funds to the projects that will be carried forward in fiscal year 2023. And with that, I'll take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Lewis. Are there council questions for Director Lewis? Councilmember Smith.
Hi, Ms. Lewis. Good to see you again. I bet you know what I'm going to ask. Did we get any bids from the town of Riverdale Park on this project?
No, we did not, unfortunately, sir. And thank you for
thank
that
you.
question.
Thank you.
Are there additional council questions or comments? Are there public questions or comments? Is someone ready to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion to authorize the town manager to sign an agreement with Clinton Sewer Expert to construct the Longfellow Street storm drainage improvements, CIP number 20PP01, for an amount not to exceed $189,575. That includes a 10% contingency and to sign Amendment 2 to the 2018 Municipal Participation Agreement between the town and Prince George's County to increase the project funding by $50,000 and extend the completion due date to April 16, 2023.
Thank you, Councilman Lingua. Is there a second?
Second.
I think Councilmember Mayer's got the second again. So by Councilmember Lingua, second by Councilmember Mayers. And I'll just say, Councilmember Lingua, that that is the second longest motion that I've heard. The first was one I was actually saying myself many years ago. I think you might remember it. So we have a motion.
Yes, I do. And that's 2 minutes of my life I'll never get back, but that's okay.
But what an investment.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Director Lewis, absolutely.
So we have a motion and second. Is there discussion of the motion by the council?
Mr. Mayor, if I may.
Please.
I would like to thank Director Lewis and staff for their efforts on this project in terms of moving it forward, in terms of getting it to this point where we are about to be able to award a contract and that we'll see it to completion. This has been a long-standing project that has had a number of complexities to it that needed to be worked out over time, and at times which was both frustrating to the town and the county. And I just want to commend her and staff for bringing us to this point this evening. Thank you on behalf of the folks of Ward 3 over there. Thank you very much.
Thank you. The staff really appreciates that.
Are there additional council comments or questions? Are there any public comments or questions? I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe. Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 601. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is motion to authorize the town manager to sign a mutual aid agreement with the University of Maryland Police Department. Do we need a report, or is someone ready to make a motion?
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to make a motion for the town to sign a mutual aid agreement with the University of Maryland Police Department.
Thank you, Councilmember Lingua. Is there a second?
Second.
Second was Councilmember Smith, I hope. Thank you for that.
No, it wasn't me. I'll take it, but it wasn't me. I think
Was
that
it-
was Sadiq.
me.
Oh, a Sadiq, thank you. I keep looking for flashing rectangles over there to figure out who's making the second. So we have a motion from Councilmember Lingua, seconded by Councilmember Sadiq. Is there a staff report? Staff summary?
Acting Chief Whitson's.
Good evening, everybody. So basically, this is just I'm sorry, can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So this is just a memorandum of agreement to work together with the University of Maryland. We have a same thing in place with all the surrounding jurisdictions. We actually had an incident, as you all know, on Saturday where we needed Hightsville City to help us out with the robbery and the shooting that took place at Wells Fargo. So it's actually very important that we get this in place.
Thank you, Acting Chief Quixons. Are there council questions or comments on this mutual aid agreement and the motion to approve? Are there any public questions or comments? Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mehian.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. The motion passes 601. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is a motion to approve the amended description of the Economic Recovery Strategy Fund. Does anyone wish to make a motion, or do you wish a report from staff first? If someone's willing to make a motion, please just make it.
So moved.
Second.
So I didn't catch either of those. Was that Councilmember Foe followed by Councilmember Smith?
You caught it. That was correct.
Very good. I was guessing though. So we have a motion and second. Do you wish to, Councilmember Foe, do you wish to speak on this, or would you like a staff summary?
Staff is way more intelligent than I am, so please.
Director Shelton, can you help us?
I don't know about that, Councilmember, but I'll do my best. The Economic Recovery Strategy Fund was developed by the town to receive the American Rescue Plan Act funds in this past fall, and I believe we were operating on the interim final rules, which were established in May. This January 6th, the final rules for the expenditure of the American Rescue Plan Act funds were established, and therefore we needed to amend our description of the fund and how we plan on using the ARPA funds within to apply to the new final rules that were released last month.
Thank you, Director Charlton. Are there council questions or comments on the rewrite of the Economic Recovery Strategy Fund? Director Shelton or Director Barnes, I'm not sure who's in charge here. Can you scroll down so we can see the text itself? So
would you rather see the red line or the nice one?
Well, I would honestly rather just see the final version. The red line I was able to carefully read through, and it was good. Actually, the final version I'm not quite happy with. So I just wanted to say that I had not given it a good read because I didn't see the final version last time, and that red text just dug into my eyes, but I'm happy with the final result. Thank you.
Thank you.
Are there any council questions or comments on this, or public questions or comments? Hearing none, I will start a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
And I abstain. Motion passes 601. Thank you very much. Last legislative action item, motion to adopt resolution 2022-R-02 establishing a redistricting committee.
So moved.
Second.
Ooh, I think she got it again.
Myers with the hat trick.
So Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Mayers. Councilmember Smith, would you like a staff report or present a summary yourself?
I'll defer to staff on this one.
Thank you.
Ms. Barnes, do you want to walk us through this?
Certainly, I'd be happy to. Good evening again, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. This resolution will establish a redistricting committee. So it's that time right after the census, the town and other entities in the state of Maryland start the redistricting process. I think we've seen it happening at the county level and at the state level, and now it's our turn. And there are several different best practices as outlined in the cover memo. But one of the very common approaches was to establish a committee. And after discussions with the council and getting feedback from the mayor, the committee would be chaired by the mayor, and then the town would solicit additional volunteers, and the appointment would be just the same as any other appointment to a committee. So it would be the mayor's appointment with confirmation from members of the council. So this is starting a very important process to redistrict the town, starting those discussions, those very important discussions as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Barnes. Are there council questions on the motion or comments?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I just want to reiterate the words of Councilman Lingua when he stated that there is no one better equipped to lead this charge than you. And I am just so wholeheartedly in support of that sentiment. After seeing what we've gone through at the county level with redistricting and what's going on nationwide, I trust you to be a fair and independent arbiter that will hear every concern. And I'm just excited about the idea moving forward that we can do this right when the rest of the country can't.
Thank you for your words of support. I have one thing to say, which is that I'm glad that we have nonpartisan elections in this town. That makes things a lot easier. So that's a good thing. Are there additional council questions or comments? Are there public questions or comments? Okay, I will do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
Thank you. I abstain. The motion passes 601. And I will have to add a little bit more money in my personal budget to my coffee fund, but we'll make it work. That Brings us to the end of legislative action items. We have 2 items of unfinished business. The first is ordinance 2022-OR-01 regarding town election procedures.
Good evening again, Mayor Thompson and members of the council. This item is on the agenda just for additional input, additional discussion. I know we've talked about this over several meetings. This is the companion legislation to the charter amendment that we just talked about during the public hearing. Both items are scheduled for adoption at a special legislative meeting on February the 28th. Both have the same effective date. So with charter amendments, it takes a little bit longer. There's more of an opportunity to for folks to weigh in if they are unhappy with it after the fact. And in that case, the ordinance cannot stand alone. So it has the same effective date. So these are 2 pieces of legislation. This is the ordinance part. And as I discussed earlier today, the town attorney doesn't feel that any changes are needed to this piece of legislation. And these procedures will again be reviewed as part of the first item of business for the new Board of Elections.
Thank you for that summary, Director Barnes. So there's no action tonight except discussion. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Are any other comments from any members of the council on this ordinance? Are there any public comments? Okay, let's move on to the next item of business then. Also under unfinished business are potential scenarios regarding the town's common seal redesign.
So
this is an item just for discussion. Town Manager Lustician.
yes, Mr. Mayor. So I've done a lot of reading. Ms. Barnes and I have gone through different scenarios of how this can be done. And really the recommended method is that should the council want to explore this, that it's best to appoint a committee, and that the committee include representatives from the council and a diverse group of residents, that they be given a specific charge to include required and regular reports back to the council, and that staff be directed to procure a vendor to facilitate community outreach for the committee, any sort of surveying and perhaps charrettes and community conversations, and then staff to be directed to procure a vendor that would then draft, and it could be the same vendor if there's one that does both things, but to draft designs for consideration by the committee to then make recommendations to the council, and that we also be given direction, and this direction doesn't have to happen tonight, but to include a line in the fiscal 23 budget. It seems that having vendors or a contractor, whether it's NDC or others, is a best practice to manage and facilitate the discussions. As noted in the memo, debate is to be expected, and navigating the community discussion is crucial to this type of an endeavor. So if the council decides to move forward, this is the staff recommendation. There are other ways to do it, but I think it's best to not try to do it all in-house, and to have a professional facilitate those discussions and that.
Thank you, Mr. Town Manager. Something that I had hoped for, and I know that there were a lot of issues at the end of last week that interfered with this, was some cost estimates for different phases of this. Do you have any guesses that you're willing to share verbally with us, if not in writing?
Well, we've reached out and we've talked to one firm. I think it's safe to say if we use our past experience, all right, so if we just look at NDC and what they did for whether it's the community garden or for the park, those efforts were $5,000 a piece. They told us at the time we're a nonprofit, but that doesn't mean that we should be working at such low prices. So they actually wanted more at the time, but they gave us a deal at 5,000. I think this would involve several discussions. So I think we would actually need probably $10,000 on that, and then plus the artwork. And then whenever this is administered, we have started looking at prices for vehicle decals and badges and all that. But I think you're talking in the tens of thousands, all said and done.
Okay. And perhaps when you do get some of those numbers during the month, whenever it is, we can ship those out to the council for review.
Yes, and if you like, Mr. Mayor, we could put this on a work session and present that sort of information to you.
That sounds good, but there's some level of desire to move forward quickly on this, and so it'd be nice if the council had maybe more than just a week to consider the numbers.
We will send something out as soon as we get it, sir.
I appreciate that. Any comments from council? Councilmember Lingua, I see you're unmuted. Would you like to comment?
I just hope we're able to come up with a process that everyone can agree with. That's going to be thorough and comprehensive, and that we come to a consensus on how we're going to move forward on this and what that design is going to be. While I know there's a desire to move quickly on this, I would hope that we don't have a rush to judgment.
Mm-hmm. I was not implying that we wanted to come to a conclusion quickly. I just think we need to get moving quickly so that there can be time for a deliberative process. You know, the various timescales I'm thinking about that could impact this. It would just be nice to have as many months as possible to discuss this. Additional council comments? Additional public comments? Okay. There is one item of detailed new business, and then I will open the floor for other items of new business. Mr. Town Manager?
Yes, and then perhaps Director Lewis could supplement my comments. We've been through this before and continuing the existing agreement. The county is locking in the price, and it's staff's position that this is what the town should do at this time. And we don't believe that we have the bandwidth to stand up our own program at this time. And Director Lewis, are there any key points? I believe this is time sensitive in terms of the county wants a response.
Actually, it is, and we're asking the council for 2 actions on this agenda item. One, to authorize the town manager to sign a letter of intent to renew the municipal curbside recycling agreement, and to actually sign that agreement at this time to extend the terms, condition, and pricing for 5 years from November 1st to October 31st, 2026.
Is there such a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Smith, seconded by Councilmember Lingua. And I hope that the recording got that motion from Director Lewis. The text of the motion from that. Are there council questions or comments on this recycling agreement? So I actually have one question. I did not have a chance to review this before the meeting. Is there a clause allowing us to exit early if we decide to, or is this locking us in for 5 years?
Yes, there is.
Can you describe the terms of that?
Jessica, could you pull up the agreement? I believe it was in the council packet.
Termination for convenience. 30 days prior notice. Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
Thank you.
Additional council questions, comments? Any public questions or comments? Guess I'll do a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Sadiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Thank you. Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
Thank you. I abstain. The motion passes 601. Are there other items of new business? I have one item of new business, and that has to do with what I said right at the very end of the mayor's report, that the legislature is in session. And last year, the council adopted a policy on council/town recommendations on legislation during the legislative session. And I would hope that the new council members on the council know about that. Basically, the town can take a position on items that clearly fall within one of our vision and commitment statements, and also anything that falls within the a prior position taken by the council. And one issue that I believe the council has taken a prior position on was a bill that was altering the terms and conditions for getting a liquor license in Prince George's County that a local business owner thought would be devastating to their business. And so we opposed that. And I just wanted to mention that a version of that bill was reintroduced in the county delegation, I believe just last week. And so just wanted to bring that up, and that I will be following the policies that were established by the council last year on what to do when there's legislation that impacts the town. Anybody have issues or concerns with that?
Mr. Mayor, is this the bill that is trying to help smaller stores convert to liquor stores?
I believe.
Or allow them to sell beer and wine?
Yes. It's opening up the number of beer and wine licenses in the county by a significant amount.
Right.
Well, but I have not, it got introduced last week and then everything blew up. And so I honestly haven't seen it, but it's on my list to read tomorrow morning.
Right. Okay. Well, if it's similar to the previous bills, I personally have the same opinion on that, and that it should be opposed.
Okay. I'll try to send a link to the text of the bill. Actually, I don't know that I have seen a link to the text of the bill. I just saw the title of it and the delegate who introduced it. And so I presume it's similar to the one that was introduced last year.
Yeah.
But I will track it down and provide that to the council for your review. And I will assume if it's substantially similar to the bill that the council opposed last year, that we can stick with that recommendation in any discussions I have.
And Mr. Mayor, Director Barnes will email out to the council the resolution that you all passed for how we will address these situations as they arrive throughout the session.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay, that's it for new business from me. Anybody else? If not, we're at the end of our agenda. Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Motion by Councilmember Foe, and I didn't see who seconded that. Who was seconded it?
Smith.
Smith. Very good. This motion is not debated, so I'll run straight to a roll call vote. Councilmember Smith.
Aye.
Councilmember Foe.
Aye.
Councilmember Lingua.
Aye.
Councilmember Siddiq.
Aye.
Councilmember Mejia.
Aye.
Councilmember Mayers.
Aye.
Saying the motion passes 6-0-1. We are adjourned at 10:12 p.m. Thank you all very much for having a good meeting.
Thank you, everyone. Have a great week.
Good night.
Good night.
Night.
Thank you all very much.